None, as I said in the last Rap Beefs episode, you're so good at condensing a lot of information into a narrative. What is going on with Drake, with Kendrick? Like, talk to me, man.
All right, so as somebody who takes pride in knowing my hip-hop history, I have to say this one is interesting because these are newer rappers relative to a lot of the ones we talked to in the past, outside of the Drake versus Pusha T battle. But what seemed to kick this whole last round off was a guest verse from Kendrick Lamar on the We Don't Trust You, Metro Boomin Future collaborative album. And it just so happened that Drake and J.Cole had done a couple of different collaborations together. One was First Person Shooter, where essentially J.Cole talked about Big Three, referring to himself, Drake, and Kendrick as the Big Three for their particular class. The guys who came up together have had varying amounts of success, but all of them have had hits, been in demand on features, been on each other's stuff. For a while, it was assumed there was mutual respect. Drake had the Poetic Justice collaboration with Kendrick. Kendrick actually opened for Drake early on in their career. So there is some history and some knowledge between the two. But Kendrick went on one, and it was like a Control verse on steroids. For those of you who don't know, Kendrick once dropped a verse on Control, which is on Big Sean's album, where he talked about he loved everybody in person, but once he got on the mic, he wanted to compete with them and make their fans forget about whoever his rivals were and join his camp in terms of the fans. But in this particular one, it was a little more targeted for Kendrick. He said things like, fuck the Big Three, it's just Big Me, essentially. So depending on how you want to interpret that, J. Cole obviously interpreted that one as an insult. More targeted disses towards Drake. Essentially, Drake's album was called For All My Dogs. There was the initial version and the Scary Hours 3 version, I believe. And what Kendrick essentially said is, for all these dogs, I'm okay with all these nines. He gonna see Pet Cemetery for all his dogs getting buried, right? So that is a much more specific reference to Drake's album, essentially kind of implying, you know, that he's firing some shots there. And so most people took it as more of a diss to Drake than J. Cole, but obviously, depending on who you are and how you feel, that it could have been a shot to J. Cole too, right? And so if I remember the chronology, J. Cole responded first because he happened to be in album mode, right? And the reason that we won't go into that one is because pretty quickly he did a public apology in his Dreamville Fest performance, essentially stopping the music, asking the crowd if they thought Kendrick was talented, and he felt like he was lame for responding. He apologized. He promptly removed it from his album, removed it from streaming without.
Wow. Okay.
And so it's one of those things where you and I, we grew up at a time where if somebody called you out.
That's right. That doesn't happen.
And if anybody asked you, you said, he said something, so I had to say something back for the sport of it.
There's no apologizing. There's right. There's no reneging, like, oh, my bad. Right. Yeah.
And there's been plenty of cases where you've had that, where, you know, rappers might diss each other just to get a battle going or for the sport of it, but they actually were cool in person. You know what I mean? Like 50 Cent was kind of known for that. Like, you know, people would come to be like, 50, why'd you diss me? And he famously pulled Chamillionaire aside and said, dude, I did that so you could get a little bit of attention. All you had to do was respond. There would have been hype.
Right.
Rolled out. You kind of blew the rollout.
Yeah.
And Millionaire was like, oh man, I was from, you know, if you diss somebody, you actually wanted to diss them, and it was like, you know, beef. And so there is a precedent for people just throwing shots just to get the buzz going.
Right. Kind of like MMA or pro wrestling or
Yeah, it's exactly like that. Yeah, like a WWE promo, like, when I see you, brother, it's on, you know. So
was that your Hulk Hogan impersonate? Can you do that again? Can we get the full Monty, do you do that?
That's better than my Macho Man, that's for sure. You know what I mean?
Why is that the two Why is that? First of all, why is that the two impersonations that everybody goes to? Everybody has a Macho Man. Everybody is a Hulk. I have one.
Yeah, you gonna do it?
Okay, I will try. It's really not good for my vocal placement, but I'm gonna try and do it. So I'm gonna be vulnerable and do my Hulk Hogan. Oh no, I was about to do Macho Man. Because brother, all those Hulkamaniacs out there, they're drinking their OJ and they're popping their vitamins, and I'm coming for you, brother. It was not that good. Damn it, that was horrible.
That's all good.
Well, I think my Macho Man is easier because I'm trying not to hurt my voice, but the Macho Man is. I saw you looking at Elizabeth with eyes of lust. Remember Elizabeth? Remember Elizabeth?
Yeah, you got to do that like tension where it's like a vein is about to pop.
And his shoulder is, oh yeah.
Like the cream rises to the top. And let me tell you, brother.
No, brother is Hulk Hogan.
That's who he is, Hulk Hogan. Oh yeah. Yeah. Cream rises to the top. Yeah. Like, all right, but we're getting off topic though. But
let's stay on the WWE. You know what the other day, this occurred to me, not the other day, like years ago. I remember watching a clip or remembering Hulk Hogan and like that song, like I am a real I'm like, wait, what real American are y'all talking about? Like it just occurred to me. I was like, oh wait, he wasn't talking about me.
We didn't know he was that racist back then.
When it goes up from you, when it's searching high, damn. Anyway,
okay. Yeah, I think most people weren't born before that. Okay.
That's okay. Listen. This is real. Real talk, man.
But okay. So since J.Cole responded and then waved the white flag, I don't think we really need to go into his. I'm just out of respect for him. He apparently is having real mental challenges around having written a diss song in response. And so we don't want to give it any energy if we feel like it's going to mess up his energy because we prize mental health on this podcast.
Right. Why like J.Cole? Yeah, I mean, it's interesting for those two to be at odds, right? Because they're aesthetically they're similar, right? They're kind of like
they were supposed to do it together.
Right. And like, but in terms of their content and their aesthetic, they're like, it's not like when we were talking about with LL and Common, right? Like they're kind of opposite poles of like one is sort of like the conscious rapper that like and then you've got LL, but with J. Cole and Kendrick, it's a lot more similar. So it's interesting to even think of them being at odds in that way in a beef. Well,
beyond that, J. Cole is one of the people that highlighted Kendrick Lamar to Dr. Dre.
Right.
And there's an argument that on some level, Kendrick owes a bit of his start to J. Cole as another aspect of it, depending on where you come down on it. That's what made it interesting. So moving on, let's talk about the Drake response, which was essentially push-ups, right? Drop and give me 50. Essentially, it's targeted saying that Kendrick Lamar needs permission from Top, who is his record label owner, to do anything because of TDE. From what I understand, he moved away from being officially signed as a joint venture between TDE and Aftermath to his new imprint called PG Lang, which is supposed to be an imprint he has more control over. I don't know enough of the business details to tell you whether it's more creative control, more monetary share, et cetera, but he does have this new imprint. Drake is essentially implying that Kendrick has a little bit less control over his career than people think, even with this new imprint. Essentially saying he was forced on the songs like Maroon 5, right? He had the song with Maroon 5, and then he had the song Bad Blood with Taylor Swift, alluding to that, kind of throwing some shots at that. Talking about how his last album was whack, which I didn't like it, but everybody's different. I could not. This is the first Kendrick album that I personally couldn't really get into on any consistent basis. It is what it is, but Drake landed a lot of shots. Actually, like I always thought that the Kendrick shot was just all right. Let's see what he's going to come back with. I didn't think Kendrick went as hard as he could have gone on the first one. Drake pretty much came back and said, no, I want the smoke. I'm not scared of you. I think part of it is he needs a battle where he is considered the victor because his last high profile battle, Pusha T basically bullied him into being bad and into the sunset. Strong, strong response. Everybody was behind him. But in this response, he also dissed a few other people, including Rick Ross, right? Essentially saying Rick Ross needed to stay out of the beef, mind his business, et cetera, et cetera. Rick Ross took offense to that because of some of the shots. And he comes back with, I think it's called Champagne Dreams, or something like that. I think that's the name of the song. I apologize if I have the name wrong. But essentially gave Drake 2 verses where he kind of went at him saying, hey, look, like, when we first started working, like I was the big artist and, you got the feature and it helped you. You're just a wannabe white boy that want to be down with black people. Oh, by the way.
Champagne moments is.
Okay. Yeah. Good. Champagne moments, not champagne dreams. I apologize. Making fun of the plastic surgery that Drake allegedly had. If you look at the cover, it's basically Drake in whiteface, which is new because he actually did take a picture of blackface. So now, we have one for each side of him, right? And then in addition to that, the cover has the hashtag BBL Drizzy. BBL famously being a reference to the plastic surgery maneuver known as the Brazilian butt lift. It's kind of funny in terms of implying that he had a BBL along with his nose job and along with his liposuction, right?
Wait, is that real? Did Drake really have those surgeries?
It's alleged, Gary. That's all. I haven't dug into TMZ to get the confirmation.
Oh, but wow, that's weird. Why would it? That's a weird thing.
He had some work done. Yeah.
Wait, what are the alleged surgeries? So Brazilian butt lift.
The
what else?
actual alleged surgeries are a nose job and like ab etching.
Ab etching? Really?
Yeah.
Oh my. So and BBL, not BBL though.
No, but obviously BBL Drizzy is a funnier hashtag than
right.
Nose job.
God, that would be crazy if that was really true.
So it is. But I thought Rick Ross landed he landed more shots in the ad libs. Like, essentially at one point to close eyes, like, I know you got your Dockers on with no draws, white boy. Just kind of pounding them. It's pretty vicious ad libs if you haven't heard it. The ad libs have happened more than the raps. I think the raps were what he was capable of doing. I'm not saying he's a bad rapper. I'm just saying he's not normally a battle rapper.
Right.
A couple shots. I think we're talking about just pure lyrical jabs thrown and landed. I think Drake had the most jabs thrown and landed. So Rick Ross responds. From what I understand, as of this time, there's no response from Kendrick. So Drake decides to do like he did with Meek Mill when he felt like he was up before and drop another follow-up. And in this one, and this may backfire. Apparently, it just came out today that there's a lawsuit over this. In this one, he decided to do his normal cadence, his normal, like, I'm going to be lyrical here, so let me kind of sound like Fonte cadence. For those of you who are Little Brother fans and understand how Little Brother shaped early Drake, you'll get that reference. But what he does is he puts his voice in AI to make himself sound like Tupac for the first verse. And then he switches it up and he uses AI to make himself sound like Snoop in the second verse. And then in the third verse, he's himself again. And so I think it's getting mixed reviews. Some people thought the use of the AI was corny. I think, the older generation remembers a time where originality was pretty much over everything. Like, you had to be on beat, you had to be original. Those two were even more important than being dope at one point. Like, you just could not sound like, dress like, rap like other people unless you were in the same.
Right.
Just kind of what it was. That's why you had, native tongue here with the medallions, and then some of the other rappers with the gold chains, and then the West Coast with the gangster wear. Like, it was a very much, this is who we are, this is what we do. And since they do it like this, we got to flip it like this. Like, the whole reason Criss Cross was walking around with backwards clothes wasn't because, it made them rap better. It was because it made them stand out. Like, who else had backwards clothes?
Right.
The aesthetic. So I say that to say Some people thought it was corny to use Tupac and Snoop AI verses and try to pretend that he was their ghost, for lack of a better term, advising Kendrick on what to do to diss Drake, right? Like one of them is, yeah, talk about how he likes young girls. That's a free one from me.
Right. You know what he
Uh,
was doing? He was pulling the Eminem 8 Mile move where
yes,
you head them off at the pass by saying all the things that you think they're going to say. And
yeah,
so in some ways that's also a bite off of that, right? Even though it's not as obvious, but like,
yeah. So I personally, and I will readily concede that I have some bias here. I personally couldn't get into this new one until he got into his own voice, because when he used those voices, he didn't deliver the verse like they would have delivered it, right? I
right.
think
It just sounded like the timbre of their voice, but the cadence wasn't the
it
same.
was still him, right?
Yeah,
So had
yeah,
he delivered that, had he delivered it like Tupac would have delivered it, had he
yeah.
delivered it like Snoop would have delivered it, that could have been dope,
Right.
maybe. But just hit it and like, oh look, it basically to me sounded like, oh look, I found a plugin that can make me sound like Tupac. I found a plugin that can make
Totally.
me sound like.
Well, here's
Okay,
my
oh,
question
well,
about it.
let's leak it and see if people like it, and then we'll
Right.
make it official. If not, like that kind of thing. And it just, it felt more like a publicity stunt than
Mm-hmm.
a diss record for me, until
Totally.
the third verse when Drake actually did go at more. So my scoreboard, if we're keeping track here, I would say right now Drake is up with push-ups. I'm not gonna deduct any points in a get off my lawn move for this weird AI Frankenstein thing that he did. But I just personally wasn't feeling it, wasn't into it. And the verses in the different voices, it seemed like he was so obsessed with that the clever lines never really
Right.
were actual verses. It's just more,
Yeah.
maybe if I do this AI, people won't notice that it's kind of mediocre. Um,
Yeah.
no disrespect to Drake. I'm just talking about for this particular song. I did
Right.
not the bars in those two legends' voices rose to the level of it being worth listening to outside of that gimmick. But the
Yeah.
third part was solid.
I
So I
I
would
think
say,
that
go
I
ahead.
think the interesting thing that occurs to me about that is, was that a function of just being lazy that he didn't try and actually rap in the same cadence, or is it a function of his limitations as a rapper? Like I feel like if you had somebody like a historian, like maybe a Buster Rhymes or like or Quest or like, I feel like people that are versed, that are actual, like Drake is not known as like a technique guy in the same way that somebody like Kendrick is, right? Like Kendrick could, if you asked him to do an impersonation of those guys, I would imagine could do it. I don't think Kendrick has that in him. And I
You,
think, what's that?
you don't think Drake has that in him, you mean?
Sorry, not, yeah, Drake.
Yeah.
I don't think Drake has that. I don't think there's this video like on the piano side of things. Like there's a video, there's a famous, or in people that follow jazz, like there's this video with the jazz pianist, shoot. Now I'm blanking on his name. There's a video where Oscar Peterson is being interviewed, and the guy says, "Oh, can you show me what Art Tatum sounded like?" And he goes through this like list of piano players and he just plays them. I
Right.
think somebody like Kendrick or Common, they could say, oh yeah, like they could go back to the early 80s and do like
Well,
iambic pentameter, the hip, the hop, that like they could go
yeah.
through each era and say this is how they did it. I don't think I don't think Drake's that kind of cat.
So the example you're looking for is Black Thought. So Black Thought on the Tipping Point album did a song where he tried to sound like Big Daddy Kane and Cool G Rap, right? Two Juice Crew legends of the 80s, golden era hip hop. And he played the song for each legend. And so Kane thought that he sounded like Cool G Rap, but didn't sound like him. Cool G Rap thought he sounded like Kane, but didn't sound as much like him. So that was pretty interesting. But you know, everybody who wasn't Big Daddy Kane or Cool G Rap was like, "Yo, it's crazy," because he, in my opinion, did a better job of delivering like them and sound. And keep in mind, when this came out, AI wasn't advanced, so it was actually Black Thought.
Yeah,
you know, adjusting his voice to sound like those two dudes. So there's precedent for it. Generally, what's supposed to happen, and I'll bring up the exception and tell you kind of why it was an exception that wasn't repeated. Generally, what's supposed to happen in that scenario is, and you know, nobody's technically a guardian of hip hop ethics, but what's supposed to happen is you're supposed to check in with the person because of how important originality was. Like, hey, I did this in Hamid. I grew up listening to you. I did a verse trying to sound like you, but
right.
You're not cool with it. But if you're not cool with it,
right.
That's typically how I came up. That's what's supposed to be done. If you mimic a person, you know, you check in with them. That's how the old school did it. Okay.
Right.
Apparently that did not happen here. Right. Snoop wasn't given permission, or Snoop wasn't asked for permission. Neither was Tupac. And the ironic thing is,
Tupac's estate. Yeah.
Right, Tupac's estate. So there's a lawsuit that just got announced by Tupac's estate. Essentially, I don't know if it's going to be a cease and desist or a full-on lawsuit, because in inside industry baseball, I've gotten the radio push DJ pool emails on this tailor-made song that has the AI in it. And typically, when you're starting to promote it to the DJ pools and the radio pools, that leaves a paper trail. You know, we won't get too technical in this podcast about what that could mean in terms of, does it stop at cease and desist? Does somebody cut a check in the background? That's all for those lawyers to determine, and I don't think it's going to be that interesting. The one time I was going to mention that is the big exception, me and the Biz, Master Ace, was a single for Master Ace. What was supposed to happen was Master Ace and Biz Markie were supposed to get on a song together. And at the time, Biz Markie and Marley Marl were having some business friction. They were just not clicking. They had a business dispute, and that basically affected the song. Biz Markie didn't want to come in to Marley's studio specifically to lay the verse down, even though he promised with Ace. He's like, no, just grab the reel, bring it to my studio, and I'll record it. And Marley was like, hell no. Like, I'm not giving you, you know, this reel so you can go over there and he can do it. So whatever you want to call it, standoff, whatever. Marley Marl essentially was like, look, man, you sound enough like Biz Markie that you could just release it. And then in the video, they have a puppet that's supposed to be Biz Markie if you watch the video. So a lot of people initially thought that it was Biz Markie because Massey sounded so much like Biz, but really it was just the reference that Biz was supposed to rap over, because there were some times when Biz wouldn't write his own rhymes. Like Big Daddy Kane wrote most of them, but at times somebody would first and then he'd hop on it. He didn't always need a ghostwriter. Like, I think the You Got What I Need was all him. But that's another story for another day. Right. What ended up happening was, because of the time that it was, Biz Markie and Massey's essentially were never as close again. Like, they would be cordial when they saw each other, but they weren't over each other's houses heavy after that. It was one of those things where they never really talked it out. So apparently, allegedly, there was almost going to be a diss record or a response record, leveraging the Steve Arrington, like, no one can be you but you, essentially going to do something like that as a shot back to Ace. So that's just, again, underscoring the point of, back then you had to get permission to sound alike. If you dropped the record, you couldn't just drop the record and not expect the person to feel away. So I say all that to say, I don't know what's going to happen with the record since Tupac's estate has come out with the lawsuit. But, you know, grumpy old man me says that's what he gets. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, he didn't do it the right way. He didn't do it what I believe to be the hip hop way. And it wasn't dope enough in those two AI sections to me to keep.
I mean, that is a really fascinating case. So there's the moral component to it, the sort of tradition of hip hop, the respect of hip hop, right? And then there's the legal component. And so because that I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think that is something that is necessarily covered by any of our current laws, because it's not an example of, it's a completely new work of art that's based on AI. Like, it's not like the cases with Ed Sheeran or other people where you're directly taking, or you're referencing something melodically or rhythmically or aesthetically. This is his voice fed into an algorithm. It's not his voice, right? So that's really I think that's probably gonna be that's a very important case in the music industry moving forward, and to see where that plays out, because it's really the first that I can think of that deals that is broaching that new territory of AI in that way. Copyright.
Yeah, so there's the takedown notice, and then there's a full-on trial, right? So there have been cases before where people have used AI to sound like Drake. And in each case, typically his parent label issues a takedown notice. Like, people are like, is this a Drake song or not? Takedown notice. Now, if you look at it from a label standpoint, if you sign the actual Drake and there's 20 people that want to drop songs because Drake is famous and they think that they're going to get clicks and views, and everybody can use Drake AI to make a song, how do you know what's really Drake's song and what's not? Right?
Yeah.
And so the problem becomes, if I got, a million people that can sound like Drake, and all I got to do is study his style, deliver it like him, and then I could say, well, I'm not allowed to say that it's Drake, blah blah blah, like, be cagey about it. All of a sudden, I could have a viral song and stuff on radio,
right?
Drake's likeness, shamelessly, and so there's no way labels are going to stand for that. Can you imagine if everybody could do fake Beyonce albums and fake Taylor Swift albums and fake, pick a massive artist? Obviously, it needs to be policed in. And what usually happens, Gary, is the labels will come in swinging their stuff around saying, hey, look, if you don't take this down whenever we say we're going to take our stuff off of your platform forever long, oh no, we need those eyeballs, right? And so whatever platform it is caves, right? So I think it's one of those things where it has to be litigated. We don't want people pretending that they found new Tupac albums when it really wasn't them, right? Leaving that gate open is just asking for trouble. And to that point, during this time, there was a guy who created a Kendrick diss song where essentially he was dissing Drake, posing as Kendrick, and he copied the delivery, copied the affectation, and then put it through AI and released it. And apparently it went viral, and then Complex decided to cover him and give him this whole feature. And the problem is, now that that's kind of opened a door, think of all these desperate rappers that need attention. Oh, I could feed my rap into this, learn how he raps and feed this in, and then I get a viral Drake song. And then I can do this unveiling, and then I'll be a star too. Like, it just starts to get really, really depressing if we try to say, oh yeah, sound like them all you want. It's cool. Nobody minds. We're gonna celebrate.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Be you, do you, take that as far as you could take it. Don't try to copy these guys and pretend you're these guys just for the clout or the attention. That's my grumpy old man moment. But I could see why, pick whoever your favorite artist is listening, and imagine that 10,000 people now sound like them, and you're never going to be able to listen to a song with their voice again and know that that's really, and that can lead to really bad things too. Like, what if somebody does something that damages the brand, and then we find out it's not even them? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, Well, and I think all of that is true, and part of what I was trying to get at and articulate, and it's helpful to hear you say all that back to me, is that I think this is one of those moments where they're going to have to write new laws around this specific, because I don't think it's covered, because normally in general, when you see these trials, you're bringing in a music expert as an example. A buddy of mine actually has done that. He's an expert witness in copyright, music copyright trials, and he goes in and he analyzes the form, the arrangement, the melody, and then he sort of lays out for the jury and the lay people, like, okay, this is why this is clearly a facsimile, a copy of this song, and this is why you should award these damages. And that's not what has happened here. And I think, again, as obviously neither of us are lawyers, but my first sort of gut response is that, like, oh yeah, this is new territory that we're venturing in, and they're definitely going to have to. I would imagine it would not surprise me if in the next year or two they introduced. You heard it here first on the Burnt Ships podcast. If the music industry lobby ostensibly comes in and pushes for some kind of an addition to copyright language that governs this kind of stuff, that would include something that mitigates or that addresses this glaring, sort of hole in copyright law. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be interesting.
There was already something in a way, because there have been robocalls where they've used AI to sound like other politicians and say disparaging, right? So I'm sure, thankfully, with that, since the politicians have had experience with that themselves, they'll understand the importance of being able to protect that aspect of someone's likeness. So yeah, I mean, I think that's our stance on AI in terms of, AI is a tool. If you're doing something for fun with your friends, I think it's fine. If you want to say in the actual piece of content that you upload, like, I tried it this way, but this is not me, and that's a very different discussion than new this song. Oh, hey, it was me. You know what I mean? And now that it's gone viral, let me get my 15 minutes of fame. Like, to me, that's weak. That's not what hip hop has ever been about. Let that be, in the other worlds, the other genres that we're less emotionally connected to and are less about originality, right? Because if you look at certain other genres, covers are expected, celebrated. It's a thing, right? Like, Jolene's been covered 400 times, right? No hip hop song has been covered 400 times. And there's a reason for that. There have been hip hop songs that have been covered, but I think the most is Black Moon Got You Open at this point. I think there's like 4 covers, but we're talking about 4 versus 400. It's 100-fold. Like, we don't even really do covers in hip hop. All right. So I say that to say, I think I'm done with the AI topic unless you got anything else, but that's kind of how I wanted to put a bow on it.
I mean, I think we could certainly move on. I think it's a topic we could do an entire episode on. I think if we're talking about broadly AI as this new technology, I think there are a lot of concerns, ethical consumption of AI and the use of AI, right? Because, like, particularly, like, basically, especially when you're talking about the visual arts, right? And a lot of, basically, they fed into these algorithms existing pieces of art, and they're monetizing other people's work indirectly. I mean, there's, but make no mistake, like, we are able to generate visual images based on text prompts because actual real life, breathing human beings' art have been cataloged and then reconfigured through the algorithm to spit something out. But that's not a computer coming up with original art. That's a computer ostensibly stealing other people's art, and we're using it, and I'm guilty of it too. So that occurred that's something, again, that I don't think we want to get into that right now for this episode, but it's definitely something that I have thought about recently. Because I'm an artist, I'm a musician, and I don't like the idea of profiting or using something that somebody else, created. But there's something about the distance between the user and the technology that makes it not as, you don't think of it as, like, in that way necessarily, but when you really start to unpack it, it actually is, it is that. So, but yeah, definitely a topic for later.
If I see any AI songs out there pretending to be burnt chips and they go viral, we're going to be claiming them first and then shut them down. And if we see you at any industry party, we fight.
Yeah, I love it.
Unless you get permission.
Right. That's right. So go ahead and steal the song so that we can sue you and make a lot of money. Dude, I know we talked about this off camera, offline, but Skip Bayless, man. I just don't like this dude. You know, he came out the other day with I think it was in the last day or two, and he made some like smart ass comment about Bronny, and I just didn't like it, man. I didn't like it. I'm trying to pull it up here.
Yeah, so what was the exact quote, man?
The quote was, Bronny had a better chance playing with Diddy than Daddy on Bronny James deciding to enter the draft. Yeah. And I'll be transparent. My bias is I don't like Skip Bayless. I haven't liked him really ever. Right. But this just added more to that. Because it's just so disrespectful to use somebody's kid as clickbait. And yes, he's a public figure. Bronny is himself a public figure now at this point, and so is his father. But the combination of the disrespect he's still a teenager. He's still basically, 18, 17, 18, 19 maybe. And I just don't like that. I'm just old school like that. It's like, get notoriety for your show on the merits of your work ethic. Like, talk about interesting things, promote interesting conversations, and have something to offer instead of just like relying on pulling LeBron. LeBron's a dad. That's his son. You know what I mean? So I just didn't like it.
Okay. So I got two thoughts on this. One is there's what's a group chat joke, and then there's what's an on-camera joke. And so that type of comment, that type of joke that he made is something that I probably would have seen, maybe even told in the group chat.
But you wouldn't have told that joke, bro. No, you wouldn't have.
But I never would have said it on TV. No, and what I mean by that is people who know my sense of humor, like, it's a little edgy, it's a little wild. It's definitely pushing the line on multiple occasions. To know me is to know that I'm a little off.
That's true.
But I know exactly. But I know that there's certain jokes I make in my group chats, right? Like jokes that we text back and forth that I'm never posting on Facebook or I'm never getting on this podcast and I'm making.
That's true. So, but he did. That's the point, right? So you're basically saying he messed up.
Well, and that's what I'm saying is, so for our listeners out there who kind of wondering when and where to filter, my general rule of thumb is we are at a time now that's a little more sensitive when it comes to sexual harassment and assault allegations. And so those are the type of
appropriately so, right.
In the group chat, at least for now, if you and your friends do have that sense of humor, but something that if you post that on social media or say that on TV, and now a bunch of people who don't know you are taking it to mean that you don't take assault seriously, when you might, but all they see is that soundbite or that clip or that quote, and they're now extrapolating whatever feelings they already have onto your character, thinking that you're minimizing assault. And so I think it's a teachable moment for our listeners, for anybody who might be open to that, unless you are in a job or an industry that's uncancelable, like you're already a comedian and people expect that out of you. Generally, I would not recommend making that kind of joke. That being said, I think the interesting follow-up point is, would anybody care about Bronny as a basketball player if his dad was not who his dad was?
But that's a straw man, and it's irrelevant in my opinion.
Well, here's why I'm asking that. I don't think, if you look at his stats for his play, right? If we're just talking about player A, like no LeBron tie, that we're talking about him in any significant way on sports radio. That would you say that that's a fair assessment, or do you feel like with his stats and his progress, he was worth talking about
No,
outside of?
he's an All-American. He was a consensus 4-star recruit. He was a McDonald's All-American as a senior.
Yeah,
He was one of the top 10 players in the nation as a senior. So we 100% would be we wouldn't be talking about him playing with his Hall of Fame father in the NBA for sure. But
No,
we
that
definitely would know who Bronny, for people that are into basketball, would know who Bronny James was.
I know who he was because of who his dad is. I'm being honest. Like what were his stats this year?
I just told you I don't know his stats, but I just told you that he was a consensus All-American.
That's possible though. Like nobody knows like the
no, I'm conceding I'm conceding that we wouldn't know. Of course his notoriety would be the reason I say it's a straw man, it's irrelevant, is this. You're making a joke about an 18-year-old kid, and you're using a current event about a celebrity who's credibly accused of all sorts of sexual assaults and rape. That's my point. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter whether we would know him or not. All that matters is it's an 18-year-old kid who has feelings, who didn't ask to be, and you're trying to get clout for your failing show after you got rid of the guy that could have helped you, who went on to do better things. You know, the Cat Williams thing just happened last month. That blew up. I think he made estimated close to $1 million. So my point is, it's just a piece of shit move. That's what it is. I don't think that's a controversial take.
So this is what I was getting at. I think if he had said he has a better chance of managing a McDonald's and playing with daddy, that would have been fair game.
Even right? That I just don't like. It's me. Yeah. It's the same debate in a sense as Kwame Brown brought up. Like, these pundits get on and all they care about is getting eyeballs and saying controversial shit instead of talking about actual shit. That's my point.
So I mean, I have a little more nuanced take on it, and here's why. Right. So we have NIL now. Right. We're no longer pretending that these are amateurs. We're no longer pretending that they're unfairly exploited kids. These are kids that now at the age of 18 are cutting $1 million deals with different brands, negotiating different appearance fees, et cetera, the minute they turn 18. And I am sure Bronny negotiated his fair share of them. So we're talking about somebody who steps in the arena now, technically as a professional. I'm not
just for those who don't know, can you just explain what NIL is real quick, the summary version?
So name, image, likeness, and essentially what used to happen for years and years was college athletes were not allowed to profit off of their name, their image, and likeness. The school would make all of these deals and sell all these jerseys and sell all these jersey numbers related to the athletes, and they wouldn't see a dime because that was thought to be a risk to their image or status. Meanwhile, coaches are making millions, ADs are making millions, right. And to be fair, what ended up happening is things got crazier, and the inequality was identified. Quite frankly, boosters were sliding money under the table to different players, et cetera.
Oh yeah, Reggie Bush got his Heisman back. Yay.
He did. Or in cases where it was obvious what it was, but nobody could quite prove it. Things like Jason Williams' mom got a cush job at a brokerage with no Series 6, like no background in trading and finance. And suddenly she has a cush job at a brokerage in Durham, while Jason Williams is playing basketball for Duke. Like strange coincidence. She
Williams, man.
Really charmed them, right? And so what ended up happening was, at the end of the day, there were some successful legal challenges to this dichotomy, and that allowed for the image. Like, so
All right. So now how does that relate to your point?
So how this relates to my point is I don't think we can have it both ways. If I'm saying, yo, man, you're 18, you can sign your name on this, make millions, charge people millions to feature you in these ads, charge people millions to feature you in this endorsement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, you're no longer an amateur, and everything that comes with that comes with that. Like, professional athletes since the beginning of time have been critiqued. Whether you're talking about can't play defense, like, no, because hear me out.
But that's not a critique, though, bro. That's not a critique.
Can I finish?
Of course you can finish, but that's not a critique.
So this is where I'm getting to. To me, the cutoff is once you're 18 and you're getting paid, like, you're going to take the shots that come along with that. Fairly or unfairly, there were some college kids who already were. And so where I'm going with this is I wouldn't have been remotely affected, offended, whatever, if Skip Bayless had said about Bronny, he has a better chance managing a McDonald's than playing with daddy. That's because there's nothing to say other than, well, I'm looking at his stats and currently that's fair unless LeBron does a wink, wink, nod, nod with one of his buddies in the NBA. He probably ain't getting on the squad. Right. So that's what I was getting to is I think for our listeners or whatever, if you swap that out and said, yeah, he has a better chance of managing a McDonald's and playing with daddy, that would be fair game. And that's less charged. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's where I was going there.
I think there are other ways to make the point. And even I think we'll probably just and this is okay. Like this is part of having a conversation in a podcast. Like I think we just disagree on what a legit critique is. So you can make the point, which is what Skip Bayless was trying to do, right? Because Bronny declared for the draft, and he's probably not going to be ranked high in the ESPN mock draft that came out. Based on because he had a poor freshman, he had a very middling freshman season. Was potentially going to transfer to Duke or another blue chip program. So that part of it can be critiqued. Like, well, but there's a way. It goes back to the Kwame Brown thing. Like, I think for too long, sports punditry has been defined in a similar way that political punditry has. Right? It's conflict. It's horse race coverage, and so yes, that is a feature of the landscape once you're a professional and or NIL, to your point. And just because something is conducted in a certain way doesn't make it correct at the end of the day. And so my point is, I'm actually, I didn't intend to go here with it, but like now that we're unpacking it, my broader point is that the sports punditry, that version of it is not for me. And I know that it's the way it's practiced. Mm-hmm. And all I was saying was like, it's a POS move for somebody that is supposed to be this like called balls and strikes, right? Because that's what these pundits want us to believe about them, is that I'm just here giving you the straight dope, the straight analysis about strategy and about the culture but I'm empirical. And they want to pretend that's what they do, but then they do this thing. And at the end of the day, Skip Bayless's show is failing, and he's probably not going to be on the air much longer. I would be surprised if he was on the air in 2 years. And so, but I just don't, I don't like people saying, you're the biggest bust of all time, Kwame Brown. That guy went out and vibrated the air and did something with his life. Whatever he's played in the league for 13 years, he did something, and Bronny's trying to do something. So I guess I'm coming at it from, I think technically you're correct. That's what happens. And yes, all of that is in play. But at the end of the day, Bayless's comment is part of a long-standing pattern of shitty punditry that this guy has engaged in over the years, is my point.
Well, all right. So I'll tell you where my clarification is coming from. Like, I to keep it 100, I've criticized players before. Like, whether it's in the group chat or whether it's with my buddies or even to
You're
you.
not a sports pundit
No,
who gets retweeted and requoted, and that's the difference, bro.
but
That's a
but
big
what I'm saying,
difference.
no, but what I'm saying is I think there's fair and there's not fair, right? So if we're talking about Colin Cowherd and the way that he automatically assumed that Sean Taylor was part of some criminal activity when he was murdered, that was a low point in sports journalism. I know that Cowherd took a beating for it and deservedly so, right? So I think there are cases where sports pundits try to assume too much, try to assassinate somebody's character without any particular context, sourcing, and that's 100% irresponsible and it's 100% indefensible. I'm completely with you there. I think if you're going to say a player stunk, you got to say a player stunk. If you're going to say a player underperformed, I think that's fair too. I think if you're going to say a player like Jamarcus Russell, like people call him a bust, yeah, he was a bust. And he made a lot of money while being a bust. He made more money than I've seen in over, my career so far. So he left with a ton of money and he underperformed. That's the draft, right? I don't think calling somebody the biggest bust of all time is out of bounds if you have the metrics to back it up. If you're saying this guy went number one, he averaged 5 points a game and with 5 rebounds, and he was expected to be a 15 and 15 or a 20 and 10 guy, and everybody else at this number one position performed this way, and statistically that shows out. I'm not going to argue with a pundit that says the biggest bust of all time, and I'm not going to argue with somebody who says somebody with Bronny stats, and this is no shade around. I'm just saying this: somebody with Bronny stats is more likely to manage a McDonald's and be in the NBA. That to me is not out of bounds. I think when it starts to get into
But we don't know that, bro. Like his history hasn't even been written yet. This is kind of part of what I'm getting at. You don't know that he's.
Yes, but my point is, if you look at Bronny's USC stats currently, and he's declared for the NBA, and you say, since he's declared for the NBA, I'm going to analyze him like a prospect. And in all of my analysis, this point average relative to what usually gets drafted, relative to who else declared, at this point, he has more chance managing a McDonald's than to make it in the NBA.
That's not even remotely true, though.
But we've seen players rally and be better, et cetera, et cetera. Like he's still a freshman. If he goes back, all of that is to me inbounds because you're saying nothing's preventing them from turning this around. But currently, dude averages 5 and 3, and what NBA scout is salivating over 5 and 3? You get fired for taking that.
But even on the merits of what you're saying, bro, it's empirically not true that he has a better chance of managing a McDonald's. He is going to get drafted. He has a much higher likelihood that he's going to get drafted at some point and make it in the NBA than he does of ending up at a McDonald's. So even that is not true. So that's my point. So and none of the nuanced things that you said are what Bayless said in that quote or tweet, right?
But we've had scenarios where McDonald's All-Americans didn't pan out.
That's not what you just said, though. You just said that he would be the manager of him. Do you really think that Bronny's going to manage it? He's more likely to end up managing a McDonald's than he's an NBA? You really think that? Yeah.
I don't follow his career enough.
Okay. You won't say it because you know it's not true.
Hear me out. I don't know if everybody who has looked at him, who has watched him, who is familiar with his stats tells me currently this dude has no shot in the NBA. Hold on one second. Can you hear me? Yeah. That's what I've heard. I've heard he has no chance at the NBA with how he's currently performing. Because because the struggle is this, right? Pac-12 is not known as a basketball powerhouse conference. We can both agree. Currently, it's just not. It's not considered a powerhouse basketball conference. Nobody's scared of anybody coming out of the Pac-10, Pac-12, RIP. I know they're no longer that. And you're telling me you couldn't dominate in the Pac-12, but you're an NBA star?
Right. No. That's different, but that's what you just said is
he putting
fundamentally
up
different. What you just said is different than saying he has a better chance of being a McDonald's manager than being an NBA. And it's certainly different than saying he has a better chance with being with Diddy than
all right. So it's what, 60? So 60 something people get drafted, right? 60 every year? 60?
Somewhere around there.
64. You've just watched the NCAA tournament, or at least I have.
What's funny is I don't think you and you've already agreed. We don't disagree all that much. So like, you know, I mean, you agreed that Skip's comment was over the line. So I don't, you know.
Right. In the sexual, but my point is, if you want to say something like, yeah, a better chance to manage McDonald's, I wouldn't be offended by that. And you're still taking exception. That's really where we fall apart.
Yeah, that's where you don't take, but I also
struggle is if you can't do nothing in the Pac-12, like other than genetics, like, oh, maybe if we, you get what I'm saying? Like, remove the daddy thing. Does he have a shot with those stats right now, with those stats in a weak ass Pac-12?
I think
remove the daddy thing.
Of course he has
a shot.
Of course bro. People from with lesser stats have gotten into the NBA. So of course that's not a thing to argue about. Of course he has. Everything is possible.
I'm saying right now, like we can only judge what he is right now in declaring. If you want to say he goes back and he gets coached, and he ties himself to,
he 100% has a shot. He 100% has a shot.
Cool.
100%.
Right now with those USC stats. Tell me his USC stats right now that have you thinking he's NBA ready.
No, I'm not even talking about. I know that
let's talk stats. What are his stats?
You're just using an argumentation technique to try and get to box me in. My point is, based on his potential, there is always a chance that a team would take a chance on somebody like him, particularly given his lineage. So I just think
yes. Thank you for saying what the truth is.
I never didn't say that. I never did say that.
Which is his stats on the face in a weak Pac-12 are not compelling to NBA scouts. It is a hope, prayer, and or pity move that would get him into the league.
It could be any one of those.
It is not his on-court merit.
Right, but that's not what originally started it. My point was about Skip Bayless.
No, I get what your point is, but we have to also, what's fair criticism in that? Look, you're saying that you want this position.
So you think that it was unfair? It's not even a criticism what he did, right?
So like it would be like me telling you, yo, Gary, I'm gonna make it as a professional singer. I'm gonna walk into Atlantic with the demos that I sang myself. You don't even need to re-sing them. I'm gonna call Mike Karen and tell him that he needs to cut me $1 million. You would have jokes about that because we both know I can't sing. Like I know what my limitations are, bro. Regardless of
I don't think that's apples. I don't think we have to go on with this because I don't think that's an apple. Again, I'm not an entertainment pundit with a major platform shitting on your dreams in front of the entire world on the internet. That's a big difference.
You declare for the draft, bro. People pick you apart as a prospect. That's the
pick you apart in fair ways, but not by comparing you to Diddy.
Yeah, I was about to say, don't say you compared him to Diddy.
But yeah, that's all I'm saying. I don't know what we're arguing about because you've already conceded that was a shitty remark.
So since you didn't want to look it up, I will share with our listeners who are dying to know what this legend stats are. And in a amazingly strong, super hyper competitive Pac-12, sorry, Bronny, for any criticism here, 4.8 points a game.
Yeah, I thought it was about 4 points a game. That's what I remember.
2.1 assists per game, field goal percentage 36.6. All right. Game started. 6. And he's declaring for the NBA draft I'm sorry, but take away the last name. You've only started 6 games out of 25. You're averaging to be nice. I'll round up 5 points a game, 3 rebounds a game, 2 assists, and can't get off the bench in a mediocre Pac-12. That is why somebody was going.
But I haven't disputed any of that.
No,
yeah, I don't.
I'm just not arguing with you. I'm giving context for look. If any other player not related to LeBron James declared with these stats, 6 games out of 25 started, 5 points a game, 3 rebounds a game, 2 assists a game, 36.6% field goal percentage, they would probably get roasted or criticized in some way.
Right, but non, my
Dude,
criticism, criticism wasn't that. That's not what happened. The point is, his dad is LeBron James, and Skip Bayless made a shitty remark and included a reference to Diddy so in it. That's the point. That's the point.
That part we agreed on. I'm looking at these numbers, and I would now definitely be fine with the McDonald's had they swapped out the managing a McDonald's, because 6 games started out of 25 in the Pac-12, 5 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists. If he had switched it to McDonald's, I would have been fine with it. Skip,
yeah,
right. It was anything. But yeah, it's you can't even start. Like, I mean, yeah.
I wouldn't. I don't think that's accurate either. I think he has a better shot at this point of making the NBA than he does of being a manager at McDonald's. So maybe there's some other version of that analogy that would work for me, but that one doesn't, because I also don't think that's true either. I think he's even without his dad, I think there's a good chance that he'll probably end up in the NBA. And yes, he had a crappy freshman season. But I like underdogs, so we'll see what happens.
How long did that? Now this is an interesting question. How long did Jordan's sons play in the NBA? Because I think they actually had better stats than Bronny, didn't they?
No, his kids were horrible in college.
So is Bronny.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. Well, we'll see, man. Maybe we should put a gentleman's bet on it. We could do a trading places bet on Bronny.
Marcus Jordan. Did Marcus Jordan even get drafted? Because there was 2 of them, Michael Jordan Jr. and Marcus Jordan, right?
Right. Yeah. Larry Jordan, I think his name was.
Okay, so Michael Jordan's son, Marcus Jordan, did not get drafted. It's college.
Is he managing a McDonald's?
So there's Jeffrey Jordan. Hold on, let's look up
which
Jeffrey
McDonald's
Jordan.
Is he managing?
Hold on, let's look up Jeffrey Jordan. I guess the point is there are more McDonald's for him to manage than NBA jobs that he has a chance of getting. Right? Think about how many McDonald's there are. Think about how many NBA jobs there are. It's a lot more McDonald's than there are NBA jobs, bro. I'm
just saying. Just admit it was a poor analogy. You got to find something.
Okay, no, let's do it. How many McDonald's are there in the U.S.? Not even in the world. He could make.
That's not how stats work. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the light. There are other factors beyond the sheer number of McDonald's.
Also not in the league. So to be fair, Gary, like if we're gonna talk about it, like let's really talk about it to our listeners correct. So Michael Jordan, arguably the greatest player of all time before LeBron, had 2 sons who both played college basketball, and neither one was drafted into the NBA. I don't see NBA stats for his son, Jeffrey Jordan or Marcus Jordan. That does not mean that they are bad people. This was just me studying to see if bloodlines were so strong that they might lead to interest in college players who did not have the stats that supported an NBA career, but did have the lineage. And so in Michael Jordan's case, his name was not enough to get his kids into the NBA. So Jeffrey, go ahead.
I think the difference, again, to try and make it, if I'm not mistaken, neither Marcus nor Jeffrey Jordan were McDonald's All-Americans. So, if it can go either way. You can, as a scout, you can make a you can make, as a scout, you're including the totality of somebody's career with the bias towards the most recent. So yes, I acknowledge there are challenges for him, and that's the whole point. That was Skip Bayless's point. If he had just said that, that would be fine, but that's not what he said. If he had just said, like, yeah, he's dropped in the draft, it's going to be really hard for him to get drafted by the Lakers or play, end up. That goal has become much harder based on his performance. If he had said that, that's cool, but that's not what he said. He made a joke. He made a cheap joke about Diddy's my point. But Jeffrey and Marcus Jordan were nowhere near the prospects. Again, I don't have their high school stats in front of me, but they were not anywhere near the elite level of a caliber of player that Bronny was at the same point at their senior years, exiting their senior years in high school. And I think that makes a difference. So is it going to be hard for him? 100%. Is he guaranteed to make it in the NBA? No, but he's certainly got a better shot at that at this point in his life than he does of ending up as a manager in McDonald's.
So just for context, there are 560 players total in the NBA. There are 40,275 McDonald's worldwide.
Dude, I just acknowledged all that. I just said it's going to be hard for him.
No, I just wanted to give our listeners context there. So he has 40,200 jobs over here and 560 over here. You never know. My contention is this. I think if LeBron strong arms the Lakers into like some kind of 10-day contract or something, just so he and his kid to play together, yes, that is the way that he gets in. And, shout out to him for being rich enough and powerful enough to twist.
First of all, he won't need to, if there's an opportunity for Bronny to get a 10-day contract with the Lakers, LeBron will not have to lift a finger or strong arm anybody. It will just happen. That it's not even a question of him making a call. I mean, if the Bucks could hang on to Giannis's younger brother for 5 years longer than they should have, right? Just to make Giannis happy, trust me, the Lakers will do that. And I acknowledge all that. So that's not an issue.
Yeah, I think that's what it would be. To be fair, I think if LeBron pressures, coaxes, implies the Lakers into do my son a solid because he has no chance anywhere else.
Yeah.
That's how he gets in. But my point still stands. Like it's essentially nepotism at that point. It's
so if he gets drafted by another team, then it wasn't nepotism, and you'll concede that he got in on his own.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Right,
absolutely. Enough. And I realize all it takes is one dumb GM. I'm just saying that 5 points.
There you go. Dude, this is fun. This is the most debate time we've had since we
and again
and on the most random of things. Like at the end of the day, I don't really care about the Lakers or Bronny. It's so funny.
And to be clear, like I hope that if Bronny chooses to return to college, that he does flourish and he does get to start more games and all that. I don't have anything against him.
No, I don't. I didn't think that.
That those stats were pretty underwhelming in pretty weak conference. And so when I looked, it pretty much confirmed what people were saying, which was we have no idea why he's declaring for the NBA with this other than dad has some favors owed, which that might be what it is. It might just be that LeBron has so many.
And you know what, Nan?
Yeah.
I ain't mad at him. And I have no problem with nepotism in certain contexts, right? Because it happens all the time. It happens so I'm good with it.
I don't have a problem if it's not my team, right? Like on my team, I want the best players. Like on somebody else's team, oh, it's cute. You get what I'm saying? So like if the Lakers do it, that's cute. They get to play together. But if it's my team, man, get that scrub off my team. Ain't nobody got time for that shit. I don't give a fuck who his father is.
Hey, I gotta hang. I know we wanted to talk about something else, but I gotta end with this real quick. You're reminding me of the greatest nepotism moment in the music industry of all time. Somebody's Watching Me, Rockwell. Okay, let me explain to you. When that song came out and I heard it, I was so excited because it starts with the hook, right? It starts with Michael Jackson.
But, yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's the new Michael Jackson song. And then the hook ended, and then this shitty rap came on with nobody singing. It was Rockwell. And I was like, wait, that's not Michael. Who is that? And it was only till like years later that I realized who Rockwell was. For our listeners who don't know, that was his stage name, but that was the son of the founder of Motown, Berry Gordy.
Right.
And basically they had done this vanity project for his son and just put out an entire album, and that was the lead single. And but I was so annoyed with that song because the hook was freaking. I got a feel about it. Somebody's watching me, and then I'm just an average man, and I was just like, what the hell? What is this? Do you remember that? Feel like being so disappointed with that song?
I liked it. I was a kid, but I liked it.
You liked the rap part too?
I'm an average man with an average life.
Oh my God.
I was little though. I didn't know any better. I just knew I loved.
I was little too. I was like 10 or 11 when that came out. Anyway.
I was jamming to it. I don't remember anything else but the hook, and I'm an average man with an average life. That's all I got. I can tell you. I think it's like every day I pay the price is like one of the lines.
Can you imagine? Like, okay, so we bust our humps promoting our music, you know, just making good music, trying to get eyeballs, social media, all that stuff. Can you imagine just waking up and just being like, hey Dad, like
a record deal.
Can you do a single can you invite Michael Jackson in and have him sit on guest on this song and then just put it out for me? Like, okay.
So I guess he's not an average man with an average life after all, huh?
I was so bad when I heard that. I was like, oh man, you tricked me. That is not Michael Jackson. That's some guy named Rockwell. How dare you?
Yeah, Michael Jackson single first due. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, that could be a good episode, like top nepotism,
baby.
Top nepotism moments.
That'd have to be a 2-hour one. There's so many.
All right, let's start compiling a list. There's
so many nepo babies. Yeah, we would need to do a 2-hour or a part 1, part 2.
Ooh, I'm trying to think of them right now. What's another one?
There's a lot of them. Lou Adler, Cisco Adler.
Oh yeah.
Wilson Phillips.
Yeah. Oh, Wilson Phillips. That's a big one.
Yeah. It's a lot of them.
We could expand it. It doesn't just have to.
LMFAO or LFMAO, whatever it is.
We could do like everything, politics, like I don't know, say the president of the United States, George W. Bush.
You would have you hours, and don't even get me started about acting. Acting is where it's like the most, I think.
Oh my God, 100%. Yeah. Anyway, all right, man.
Hey, man.
Good stuff. I appreciate you as always.
Yeah, likewise, man.